John F. Kennedy, he stated, mankind must put an end to war, or war will put an end to mankind. Today, as we consider the devastation, as we consider what's going on currently in our modern day conflicts with Iran, America, and Israel, we must reflect on the moral imperatives that guide us. Like I stated before, I am an ex Marine from the Marine Corps. I served in the Marines for 8 years. I've been trained by the military to do so. I do understand how to respect America, how to respect government, and how we function, in that particular aspect, and as far as being an ex-military person with an honorable discharge, I just feel that certain things should be stated. Now, along with that, I'm also a prophet. My name is Prophet Elijah Hill. I've been an advisor to presidents before. President George Bush, I was his advisor during 9/11. I've been to the White House, been invited during the Obama administration. I've been involved, as far as being a spiritual advisor. Um, I do understand the importance of how we need to, make sure, even as prophets or spiritual leaders, that we just can't go along to get along. We have to be able to keep our voice secure and keep an open voice where it's not just speaking well of, the leader, but sometimes you have to give guidance that is in another direction that doesn't exempt from the fact of, having to pray for the leader. You still want to do that. But at the same time, the prophetic voice of the church is there to bring balance to leaders. If leaders are out of balance, then more than likely it's the prophetic voice in the world's fault. Those that are close to the presidents or the kings or whomsoever, people not giving way to their voice. And we're living in a society today. People want you to shut up and be quiet and go along with everybody else. But that is not the historical foundation of the Bible theologically. That's why God called prophets. He called prophets in order to address kings, political leaders, and to give them instruction and insight and to tell them what is right and wrong. And so it's been a long history all through the Bible. So, in just taking a snapshot, look at this particular thing as a military personnel of the past myself. I remember when President Reagan wanted to invade Grenada. I was in the military at the time. I was going to be activated during that time before they, took a different turn. But let me address these current issues. The Geneva Convention arose from humanity's darkest hours. They created the Geneva Convention after World War II. The purpose of it was to bring a more humanitarian view and perspective on wars in the world itself. And Václav Havel reminds us from Europe, without a global revolution, that without a global revolution, and we lose human consciousness, nothing will basically change. So bombing civilians is not a good revolution. And it's not a good plan for a military plan to try to achieve resolution. There are other ways in which you can achieve it militarily without civilians being in harm's way. Now, Martin Luther King Jr. stated, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Indiscriminate forces does not lead to peace, but breeds more darkness. Winston Churchill once said, to jaw is better than to war. True strategy lies in diplomacy and restraint. Nelson Mandela taught us that to be free is to respect the freedom of others. Peace is not achieved by domination, but by recognizing shared dignity. If we want to end the end to war, we must begin with humanity. In the end, it's going to all fall back to humanity talking, trying to come to some diplomatic understanding, even if war is implemented. I'm an ex-military person and a Marine. We were the first to fight. We were the kind of the Marines are the sector; they're the specialists. We be on the Army would wait until the Marines basically approached, the enemy's, bombing shores and broke ground or whatever for the Army to even come on. So the Marines were the specialists when it came to military, the first to fight, and so we understand what war is about. In Revelations 13, I want to bring this out as a man of God. It says the danger of boasting power, calling down fire from heaven. The Bible talks about their parallels modern conflict. In Revelation 13, the imagery of the beast calling down fire from heaven warns us about the arrogance of power. You know, this beast boasts of its might, of its ability to dominate. Today, when the nations boast of their nuclear arsenals, um, when leaders declare their capacity to rain down um, destruction, we must heed this warning. War is not a stage for pride. It is a test of our morality when it's all said and done. And Geneva Convention reminds us that even war, we must protect humanity in the end. When we see the bombing of Ukraine, and the bombings in Gaza or between Iran and Israel, we must ask, is this the fire from heaven or the descent into arrogance that has been foretold by prophets of old when we get into pride? I mean, when we're able to use our power, I think the bullying technique, the boldly being proud about what we have, we can just attack anyone. We can come against anyone. In Revelations, it teaches us about moving away from that because it goes back into the beast, which the beast is symbolic in Revelations of the politics and the politician, and it leads into the Antichrist. So we don't want to be looking that way, appearing like we're being prideful and boastful about us calling down fire from heaven and all that stuff and destroying people and all that. We need to use grace in how we approach things, grace in how we deal with things as a political leader. We must choose humility over hubris. The moral value of humanity lies not in domination, but in compassion. The beast boasts of power, we must boast of peace. If we continue on a path of destruction, we fulfill the darkest prophecies of the Bible. But if we reject the boastful beast and embrace our shared humanity, we can find another way. Moral courage, not pride, is what brings us together toward genuine resolution. The boasting and the being proud that America's able to do this and that. I am proud of America, but I don't like the style and the approach of boasting because the Bible's against it. The Bible speaks that, it's connected to Lucifer and his techniques, of the Antichrist. So we shouldn't, embrace that or try to approach like that or bullying, because basically bullying um, I mean, basically, I can just use a basic common denominator of life. Growing up, if you deal with youth that are bullied, if you keep bullying someone, even if they're weaker than you, or eventually somebody is going to react. And sometimes it don't come out that the bully wins. They end up suffering something that they ended up thinking that could not be done. And I don't want America to be faced with that because of the fact that we don't have the foresight to understand that even though you have power, just because you have power don't mean you have to come against, and make others feel bad and come at it in an arrogant way. Because we know the Bible says haughtiness come before a fall. So all of this pride and foolishness is just not appropriate in politics. Uh, JFK quoted our eight urgent choice between ending war or facing annihilation. That's why he said mankind must put an end to war, or war will put an end to mankind. In the past several years, we have witnessed a troubling pattern with Gaza and Ukraine and Iran to Israel and America here lately, where indiscriminate bombing of cities has been used as an instrument of war. And this is what I feel is inappropriate because when we're constantly bombing cities, we're then making civilians subject to annihilation, to murder. To me, it's not war. When you're bombing cities, when you're bombing towns, when you're bombing children, when you're bombing women, you are murdering people. We can't sit around and justify that. I don't care if it's America, or I don't care if it's Israel or anyone else. God is not for that. There is another way to approach war. You can go in, and if it's an enemy in that city, you just have to use your military forces and go in and deal with them and get them out that way. That's what the Marines were for in America. We were the first to fight. We were the best shooters, the best snipers, any special ops, special projects. That's what we do. We go in and we deal with the enemy. There's going to be casualties in order to do it, but it's better not to try to bring that war to civilians. And this is the point, that I'm making. Since Ukraine, first Russia, takes on that mode of operando of bombing cities, don't care. If I want something, I just go take it. Now we have the same spirit in America taking Putin's model, just bomb, bomb, bomb. Now, Israel, yes, they're God's chosen people, but at the same time, that does not justify you operating in the wrong spirit. Now, Netanyahu, bomb, bomb, bomb. You don't care if it's civilians, you don't care if it's the people. You start out making military strategic bombings, but then eventually it goes to you just wanting to destroy the whole city, annihilate all the people. And to me, that's what ended up happening in Gaza. And if we're not careful, we're going to end up seeing this happen in Iran. So, what I'm saying is we have to have more courage here and respect for one another, and the end result, if you're going to start the war, you have to have an exit plan. The exit plan is not telling people to overthrow a government. You have to get in there and send some troops in order to specialize troops to identify what's what and try to get it done. It's hard, it's difficult to do it that way, but hey, you're gonna have to do it in a specialized way where you don't have to use as much military personnel. But if you're gonna bomb, you should specifically be bombing military sites. We shouldn't be seeing whole apartments falling, civic buildings falling, all of that stuff. That's foolishness. You don't come against nations like that and destroy, all of what's out there, because eventually it's going to have to be rebuilt. Money's going to have to be reinvested, that type of thing. So it's just not wisdom to approach it that way. What moral value is there in this approach? Now, the Geneva Conventions were clear. Humanity must be protected, even in conflict. Bombing civilians defies the principle that we must distinguish combatants from the innocent. So, morality, we need morality here. Our recognition of human dignity is central to ending conflict. Dr. Martin Luther King said, remind us darkness cannot drive out darkness. When we rely on random bombings as a tactic, we deepen the darkness. We just set up revenge in people's hearts that's going to come out later. That's where ISIS will form and Al Qaeda. Eventually, when you do things like this, you're going to have a whiplash later on where you got sales in America, or what happened with 9/11, on and on. There's other ways that this stuff can be a backlash, or you can keep bullying like this and create an atmosphere in where somebody just gets tired of it and somebody pulls that trigger, and America then ends up suffering something that they don't want to suffer. So, the thing is that we have to use wisdom to have God on our side. We can't have an evil heart or a wicked heart. toward people and expect God is going to bless us. He can't bless us if we're going about it in the wrong way. Even Winston Churchill, in a wartime leader, he understood to jaw is better than to war. Peace is found in dialogue, not destruction. In Israel and Gaza, in Iran and Israel and Ukraine, the moral value of humanity is tested. Now, what's been happening in the past 5 years since Putin started with Ukraine, using the same bullying tactic, no respect for the law, no respect for human life, no respect for civilians. Now, Israel started in the same spirit as him. They're doing the same thing in the name of God, in the name of protecting Israel. There's nothing wrong with going to war, but when you start bombing, and then on reverse, Israel's getting bombed. His own citizens are getting bombed. So you're damaging Israel too. So if you don't use a strategic plan in war, then it ends up becoming a catastrophe altogether. Nelson Mandela taught that freedom comes from respecting others. We cannot claim victory by destroying lives. The path to resolution lies in moral courage, the courage to end war, not perpetuate it. If we want peace, we must remember our humanity is our greatest weapon. The Geneva Convention talked about these things: humanity and war, the explanation of Geneva principles protecting civilians. We are right to question this. Strategically, military doctrine emphasizes precision, targeting combatants, not broad urban area. See, that we're not supposed to be doing that according to international laws that our forefathers across internationally tried to agree to. So we wouldn't fall into the situation that we've been falling in the last 5 years. When civilian areas are bombed, it not only raises humanitarian concerns, but it can also undermine strategic goals. It raises alienating populations and fueling resistance. In international law and ethics, civilians' protection is paramount. If cities are bombed, it should be an absolute last resort, if ever. In modern conflicts, the respecting of humanity isn't just moral, it's vital for our lasting peace. America and Israel needs to stop taking their war plans from Putin's playbook towards Ukraine. Basically, I want something, so I just go get it and I go take it and I attack it, or I come up with a reason to justify attacking it. Now, America, they're saying they had the ability to try to Iran to have certain weapons, but now let's look at the playbook of history. I'm a military man, so okay, I understand the military, I understand the government, I served in the government. But what I'm saying is that even in the past, when President George W. Bush said there was weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, come to find out, we did all that war, but it wasn't proven to be so and factual. So it does happen. Sometimes leaders do say things that are not true, and presidents can do that too. So I don't know if I literally believe that there were weapons to that degree. I believe they were potentially working on uranium or what have you, and an increase of it. But to have what they're saying, I don't believe that this was the reasoning behind it. What does American politics look like today? Let's look back at Hitler's fascism, his politics, and compare it to ourselves. Here's the definition of fascism. And if you take a look at it, you'll find out you see a lot of it going on today. Fascism, Hitler's politics that sent us into World War II, is an extreme, I'm going to tell you the definition of fascism, an extreme right wing, authoritative, authoritarian, and ultra nationalist political ideology characterized by dictatorial power, forcing suppression of uh, opposition, and strong regimentation of society and the economy, It prioritizes national or race above individual rights. In other words, people become more racist. They're focusing on race. They're focusing on people's, race as the issue, and it fragments society, often utilizing militarism, propaganda, and propaganda basically is putting out a lie and constantly saying the same thing. That's what Hitler used. That was his philosophy of propaganda. You just keep repeating the same lie, and eventually people start believing what you're saying. You're lying, but you just keep repeating it. We're acting like we've never seen this in America. It's going on right now in American politics, basically because people sometimes are lying and claiming that they want to be respected and that they're right. But that's propaganda. And characteristic leaders, charismatic leaders to control all aspects of life. Now, key components within this fascism is this: authoritarian leadership. What does that mean? It means a central dictatorial leader is revered with complete obedience required. Now, if America is not careful, we begin to worship and revere like they did Hitler. We revere our leader. Yes, we're to respect our leader. Yeah, we're to look up to our leader. But when we get to the point of moving from reverence to worship like God, we begin to look at that personality as if they can do no wrong, as if they're perfect, as if there's no flaws. And America is moving very close to this fascist authoritarian leadership model where we condone, if it's just because it's on our side, if whatever political side we're on, we justify everything just because of our political party. And the things that I'm talking about, it should be more of a bipartisan approach to looking at this. Now, a biblical approach is Revelations 13:4. It says this: they worship the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And they worship the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war like him? Is this where we are? Is this what the Christian church is backing? Is this where we come to? Oh, hey, you're able to make war, you're able to bully nations, you're able to do whatever you want. Is this what is godly, what we're trying to do? Yes, I understand we should protect our nation. Yes, as a military man, an ex-veteran, yes, I respect that. But what I don't respect is the braggadocious, is the lying and saying, I got this reason for going in, or I just want to bomb, and then civilians are injured. No, it's not. It's ungodly. It's murderous, basically. All it's extreme nationalism is another part of fascism. The nation of a specific ethnic racial group is placed above all else. So people begin to have an attitude that Euro Americans is, better than everybody else. So it's okay to be racist. I can throw out stuff. I can say things because you have this extremism that isn't biblical, isn't godly at all. Because if you look at Revelations, the revelator John, when he seen heaven, it was made of nations, tongues, and creed. God made a multicultural vision of heaven, and he made the same thing on earth. So for us to have a nationalist extremism about a race, thinking that you're smarter than everybody else, you know more, it's just absurd. It's not godly, and it's condemned by God and judged by God. God is not for that. That's mankind doing that kind of foolishness. Number one, totalitarian control. Fascism seeks to control all aspects of society, including economy, culture, and individual lives. So the attitude sometimes you see in America is, hey, I want to control everything. I want to control culture, control people's individual lives. Is America using the same tactics of Hitler? Putting concentration camps together? Are we not doing that with immigration, where we're wanting to use ICE and then we want to use camps to put people in. Now we want to build that. So we're really leading into concentration camps. We're repeating history. And then we're using immigration as a, a dog whistle for racism to come against a certain group of people. So America is creating an American Gestapo, as far as to me with ICE. If you get to the point that you're trying to deal with immigrants, to cleanse the nation of that, but at the same time, ICE is empowered like the Gestapo of Hitler, where you got an internal military police where you're shooting and killing Americans. That's absurd. You're repeating Hitler's model. That's all I see is we're repeating the model of Hitler and suppression of oppression, constantly going against our Constitution, constantly the United States disrespecting the judicial branch. That's what I see in politics. If the judges um, basically make decisions against you, what we have in politics today is we disrespect the judges. At the State of the Union address, I'm surprised at the way uh, the Supreme Court judges were disrespected. We created this country so that there are there's checks and balances. The judicial part of the government is appropriate. You know, you can't have everybody going along with what you're saying. Then what you're trying to harvest, create is a dictatorship. That's basically what you're trying to do. You want to scratch the Constitution and just, hey, I'll do whatever I want to do. And that's not what America was created for. And the military, as me being an ex-military man myself, being a Marine, all those soldiers that died, some of them lost fingers, hands, limbs, some of them were blown away, some of them lost families behind fighting for America. You taught us back then that totalitarianism was wrong. You taught us that extreme nationalism, like Hitler had, was wrong. You taught us that suppressing people and using internal violence within your own country is wrong. Like we're doing using the overuse of military power, against the citizens of America when the military has a different purpose. So militarism, we're using violence and militarism to control society. And that's what Hitler did. He did the same thing. So all we're doing is repeating history. If we're not careful, we're taking the same playbook from history and bringing it forward. From a moral standpoint, the Geneva Convention emerged from humanity's darkest chapters, recognizing that even in war, human dignity must prevail. These principles don't exist to limit military capability, they exist to prevent war from devolving into annihilation, bombing civilian cities, whether in Gaza, Iran, or elsewhere, doesn't lay a path to peace eventually. In addition, the Bible says in Matthew 22 and 39, love thy neighbor as thyself. Rather, it deepens wounds when you're constantly bombing civilians and cities and not military sites. It fuels resentment. It creates generational instability. True peace is not achieved by forcing people out or destroying their homes. It's built through strategic focus on military targets, careful protection of civilians, addressing the root causes of conflicts. When war disregards humanity, it ensures only temporary domination, not resolution. If we want lasting peace, we must hold fast to these moral standards. War must always be tempered by the protection of life, not its indiscriminate destruction. Without a global resolution in the sphere of human consciousness, nothing will change for the better. These leaders, though forged by war, recognize that lasting peace depends on humanity. And President John F. Kennedy, that's why he said mankind must put an end to war, or war will put an end to mankind. These voices underscore that behind victory, humanity is the only enduring path forward. The ethical failure of bombing citizens using Dr. Martin Luther King's quote, darkness, uh, it can't overcome, you can't overcome darkness with darkness. James 3 and 8, peacemakers reap righteousness. You could draw from figures like Mahatma Gandhi, who said, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. It reminds us that endless retaliation destroys everyone's future. Constantly saying, "Oh, you hit me, I'll hit you, you attack me," but you got to go beyond the mentality of that. Not saying that war is not useful, not saying it's not appropriate, but when you constantly want to keep war going, constantly bombing civilian sites, and you set at risk civilians, you are wrong, and you are becoming a murderer. It's not war anymore. Dr. Martin Luther King spoke, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. This emphasizes that violence breeds more violence, not peace. Nelson Mandela, that's why he said it, to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. Such words remind us that genuine peace comes with mutual respect, humanity, not domination. These are the moral foundations to ground us as a people. Believing one's superiority justifies annihilation leads to a dangerous spiral. History shows that bombing alone rarely ends a conflict. It often fuels a long-term hatred that comes up later in a whole nother way. True peace requires understanding, diplomacy, recognizing all lives equal worth. While nations may feel justified in their actions, enduring peace stems from restraint, dialogue, and addressing root causes. War might suppress an adversary for a time, but real peace builds with acknowledging shared humanity, not from destruction. Why targeting civilians undercuts the peace effort? Because the strategic path should be lasting peace. Bombing civilians and causing mass suffering doesn't lead to lasting peace. It usually deepens cycles of resentment and violence. History shows that enduring peace requires addressing grievances, not exacerbating them, protecting civilians, protecting children, protecting women, basically in some of these cultures isn't just ethical, it's strategic. When people are spared, there is foundation for future reconciliation. In contrast, annihilation breeds long-term instability, perpetually conflict, ultimately adhering to humanitarian principles rather than indiscriminate force creates the trust needed for a genuine, lasting peace. Basically, Revelations 21 and 4 said God wanted to give us a future without suffering. And so the important thing is, I know Dr. Martin Luther King brought up in his concept of beloved community, it envisions a global family rooted in justice, equity, and love, where conflicts are resolved through reconciliation, not violence. Key principles include first, the inherent worth of every person, affirming that all are interrelated. Second, nonviolence is a way of life, not just a tactic, ensuring that ends and means are aligned in peace. Third, justice, which addresses not only individual wrongs, but the systems that perpetuate inequality. When woven into our speech, the beloved community reframes war as a failure of community. The If we love our neighbor, if we see ourselves as one family, then our goal isn't to win through destruction, but to build a world where, as Dr. King envisioned, love and justice reigns. One strong example is in Matthew 5 and 9. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. It's a direct call to honor those who pursue peace, not war. Another is James 3 and 18. Peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. This aligns with the idea that lasting outcomes come with peace, not destruction. Finally, Revelations 21:4, it speaks to hope beyond conflict. He will wipe away all tears from your eyes. There will be no death, mourning, or crying, or pain. Each of these verses emphasize that our highest calling is, is to seek peace and healing, not to perpetuate suffering. Uh, so basically, I just wanted to share that with you all. God bless you.